As I told you already, I was in the spin room with the team, and it was a really interesting experience. If you're not familiar, whenever a presidential debate is going on, they create what is called a spin room where the press will be. That's where you see the shots from the different outlets broadcasting, and a bunch of surrogates for either candidate come onto the floor of the spin room and let reporters ask them questions. And in my case, I got into some semi-heated confrontations with some of the Republicans, and in a different segment, I'll show you my interviews with Democrats. So one of the things I've been wanting to ask, I have for you Vivek Ramaswamy first, then we'll look at Elise, Stefanik, and Byron, three people who are all being considered to be Trump's vice presidential running mate. And I've interviewed on the show, in terms of people in positions of power, mainly Democrats. And we've tried to get Republicans, but just yeses don't come in very often there because they know it'll be sort of confrontational. And so I've been looking forward to, for a long time, a chance to ask some of the questions or bring up some of the topics that we talk about a lot on the show to these individuals. So Vivek Ramaswamy, I decided I would go with a good classic, which is the termination of the Constitution post from Trump. I've talked about it so much, and I have been thinking, I never see Republican politicians get asked who say they stand for the Constitution, how do you justify Trump calling for the termination of that Constitution? And here you'll see Vivek Ramaswamy I don't want to give myself too much credit, but just sort of quickly crumble into denying it altogether. But I'm saying the words to him that are in this post, and you'll see the post on the screen, just a disastrous back and forth. One of the attacks against Trump is commonly he wouldn't uphold the Constitution. What's your response to that?
My response to that is that's a lot of projection from the people who are making the accusations.
Does it bother you to call for the termination of the Constitution?
He did not call for the termination
a
of the
massive fraud of this type actually allows the termination of all rules, regulations, articles, even though found in the Constitution?
Cite for me one time where Donald Trump called for the termination of the Constitution.
I'm reading it to you right now.
He's never called for the termination of the Constitution.
A massive fraud of this type
But here's what I believe. I'm going to answer this question before I go to the next interview.
I'll try to cite for you.
Well, what I do believe is there's the projection of the people who do call for the termination of the Constitution and their behaviors want to take the decisions away from the voters. And never in American history have we seen the wielding of prosecutorial power to try to eliminate a candidate in the middle of an election while you had extrajudicial means of removing them from the ballot.
But I do want to start with.
Question before you head out. Are there any policies on
And then it moves on, and I say goodbye to Vivek Ramaswamy. And before getting on to the other ones, I know I was being... I was cutting him off a lot. I get that. That's sort of aggravating, maybe to some people. But every time you see these individuals get asked questions about outrageous things Trump has said, they get away with just going, nah, and then moving on. And then journalists often just sort of, all right, well, next question. But there I was really wanting to make sure that it was made clear that he was, on the record, giving a complete denial that Trump has never said anything to that effect, as it's on screen, right? That's just it's a bad look, Vivek, okay? It really is. He's never said such a thing. But then he says, cite your sources. I was a massive fraud. I'm saying it right now to you. Goodness gracious. Now, I have for you as well, Elise Stefanik, another person on the top of the list to be Trump's VP pick. And she, again, I'm going to stick to the most consequential stuff. You got the termination of the Constitution. You got Trump trying to block the peaceful transfer of power. And then we'll look at what I bring up with Byron. Here, she does admit she would do the thing that Vice President at the time, Mike Pence, refused to do, which is put Trump above the Constitution. My words, not hers, but that's what she's meaning. If you became Trump's vice president, obviously, one of the things that has been pointed out, I think on the debate stage, is that Trump tried to get Pence to not certify the election results. Is that something that you agree with or don't agree when it comes to Pence's decision?
I stood up for the Constitution. I had concerns, and I believe that there was unconstitutional overreach in the 2020 election, as the majority of Americans agree with.
Aren't courts supposed to determine that?
The court, it goes to the state legislatures, and in the state of Pennsylvania, they circumvented the state legislature,
I'm saying,
which is unconstitutional.
In terms of the constitutionality, the courts disagree with you, right?
Let me answer your question. 2020, people understand that this election was unconstitutional, and they understand that the attacks on democracy are by Democrats who are illegally weaponizing the Department of Justice office, the radical district attorney's office, who are, that's a form of
So no
election
evidence of that,
interference
but you,
going
it sounds
against
like you
Joe
are
Biden,
saying
going
that you
against
would
Joe Biden's-
go along with an anti-democratic attempt to
I've
block
already
the peaceful
answered
transfer
this
of power.
question before, is I disagree with Mike Pence's approach. I stood on the House floor and I stood up for the Constitution and election integrity. I stand by that position, and the American people, that's one of the reasons why they support Donald Trump, because he supports the Constitution.
Can Kamala Harris do that? So, also seeing the ending there. So, now that I'm watching that, I wish I had led with, I love that you say you disagree with Pence. And obviously I don't, but, right, present that. And so I'm curious, if Trump wins, could Kamala Harris then prevent the certification of Trump's win? That's the thing we've been wanting to hear from these individuals. I just was in my sort of, I'm going to build it up to that, forgetting that she, of course, has the complete and total authority to just walk away. And that ends the interview completely. But it would have been interesting to hear her response to, if you believe Pence did the wrong thing, you're saying the vice president has the power, which they don't, constitutionally, to just block the certification of an election. So then you would have to admit Kamala Harris could do the exact same thing if Trump wins, and Elise Stefanik would never admit that. But what is disturbing, frightening, chilling about that moment is, even when I phrased it as, it sounds like you're good with going along with this anti-democratic effort to put Trump above the Constitution. Again, not the exact way I worded it there, but put it in pretty blunt terms, she's willing to say, yeah, Pence did the wrong thing. So if she's picked as Trump's VP, keep in mind that the stance that makes you acceptable to Trump is saying that he is more important and valuable. You should be more loyal to him than our Constitution, as shown by him calling for the termination of the Constitution, Vivek, and wanting Mike Pence to block the certification of a lawful election, Elise Stefanik. Then you have Byron Donalds, who's been getting a lot of attention lately. Whoops. And again, I understand that I'm being a little bit short with him and cutting him off over and over, but because I knew these interactions were going to be 1-2 minutes at best, based on how many reporters, once you start talking to someone, swarms, I just had to make sure I tried my best to keep him to the question I had asked, which is, why do so many people leave Trump's administration and say he was horrible, while no one leaves Biden's to say that? People have left his administration, but they haven't left and then said he's absolutely terrible. And Byron Donalds just could not answer the question. One of the questions that I didn't hear an answer that was super clear from Trump on is, so many people, dozens of people who left his administration, very different than Biden's administration, have said, this guy's not fit to be president. Yeah, it's right here. He can do it. Good man. So how do you explain that? So many people. So he was saying my past indicated maybe I wasn't going to be the most friendly to Byron Donalds in the room for the most important decision, saying this guy can't be anywhere close to the White House.
Well, first of all, let's say this. When you fire people, whether it's an administration or even out of a company, and I've noticed this in politics, political people don't think they should ever be fired, even when they're doing a bad job. A lot of times, which frustrates the American people, is political people fail and then they get promoted. And that's frankly what pisses a lot of people off. So if Donald Trump looked at people who were working for him early on and got rid of them, and they have an axe to grind, I can't be concerned about
like
that.
Pence or all those people?
Answer, or am I going to answer?
I give you a good amount of time.
Let me answer. Let me get to this. Now,
Will you answer the question, though?
you ready? Here we go. Now, Alejandro Mayorkas is a failure. Our border is wide open. Tony Blinken is a failure. Israel is embroiled in war. Ukraine is embroiled in war. Pete Buttigieg, this dude took off for a month. Nobody even knew he was gone.
You're not talking about Trump's administration officials.
Are you talking or am I talking?
Taking a long route to it.
Bro, I know on your side,
Mike Pence. Let's go with just Mike Pence.
On your side, I know you guys will just use talking points, but when you get an educated answer, be patient and let me give it to you.
I want to hear Mike Pence, other administration officials, then I'm ready.
You go over there, and then when you're ready to have a conversation, come see me. Yes,
I'm ready. I'm here.
Yes, man. What's up?
What's your
So, yeah, just no ability to speak to, which is why I kept repeating, all right, let's just pick one person then. Because the point he was trying to make at the beginning, which was a little bit more directed at my question, was, I guess Trump was so good at firing people, as something seems to be in my eye. Trump was so good at firing people whenever they were bad that so many people have an axe to grind with him. So that's why they're saying he's a threat to our democracy. He doesn't know anything that's going on when he's in important decision-making moments. He has horrible character. He's called fallen soldiers suckers and losers. All those things from people who were long-time loyalists to the Republican Party. That's just all because they were fired. Some of them left, though. But, okay. But then I'm thinking, all right, well, what about Mike Pence? Is it really likely for you to say the reason Mike Pence is refusing to endorse Trump is because he just has an axe to grind after all the loyalty he showed to Trump? Then just a little moment at the end, he decided, nah, I'm not going to shred the Constitution for you, but I still think you're great. And that's sort of where he was, I guess, just, I don't even know what he was trying to say, that there's a lot of bad people in Biden's administration. How does that connect to, how does that answer the question that Biden was trying to get Trump to answer, which is, why do so many people leave your administration and say you're horrible? But again, it's not just refusing to endorse. Many of these individuals, I've gone through compilations before, say Trump's a threat to democracy. Former secretaries of defense. And that's just not something that happens because someone gets fired. And that's not something I've heard MAGA really address, other than saying, oh, they're all rhinos. But that's not a good answer. Byron Donalds doesn't even feel comfortable giving that dumb of an answer because he tries to sort of deliver these messages in a way that seems really thoughtful, but when you dive into it, it's anything but thoughtful. So again, as far as the experience altogether, it was mayhem on the floor. Someone would walk out, like Byron Donalds. People would notice that was him, and then it's just 50 people. So all these came from sort of right whenever they were alone for a second. And then the second that the interview started, you could just see people start to realize, oh, this is a person we want to talk to. And it got pretty hectic and pretty crazy, but definitely worth the experience. And I'm interested to hear what you all thought about those interviews. If you want to support the work that we're doing, support initiatives like this, then you can do so by clicking the join button below.